You can start with this.
Okay, I want, let's see, some of these.
Oh, you can zoom in by doing this.
Okay, good. We got a fence here. Now let's put in one of these little houses. Like this one.
A tower?
Yep, a tower. There.
You can make a tower?
How tall can you make it?
I think that's it.
Oh, okay, then.
And you can...
Bruh. We don't need that, we don't need that, we
Yeah.
don't. Okay, let's see. Let's a little bit down this. That's perfect. Oh, yay, we got a pond. Let's make a pond over here, too.
You can also do it like this.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Let's take flags and put them, one of them here, and wow, you can make that.
Wow, that's cool.
There.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Super cool.
What does this do?
Coloring?
Ha, no.
You
Wait.
can change the color of the house.
Okay, let me change it. This one could be blue. Can you go to another city?
This is like eraser. You can erase all the stuff you've done. Do you want to build a castle?
Sure,
Do you know how to build one?
maybe.
Maybe. How?
Mm,
Let me teach you a little bit, alright? So let's say you want to build a castle for you and your family. Where do you start? How thick are the stone walls? How many towers will there be? How tall are the towers? Where is your armory or your treasure room? You definitely have a lot to consider, but the most important thing when starting to build a castle is the surrounding terrain. Choosing a favorable terrain is half the success. And in general, castles are built on elevated ground, often on a small hill. So we need to create a hill by ourselves here. And in real life, people also do the same thing, and they call it moat. A moat is a large man-made earthen mound, often with a flat top, just like we have done here. When we finish the moat, the next thing is to place a house where you and your family will live, just like everyone else's house, except that in the future, this large house surrounded by stone walls will be called the keep. And in this large keep, there are many rooms, each serving a different purpose. For example, there's a dining hall where the whole family can eat together, a living room where families share their stories, a playroom for the children to build their toy castles, And of course a study where people read, but we better keep the kitchen out of our keep because we need to reduce the risk of a fire starting in the kitchen and then spreading to the living quarters. Anyway, after the rooms, we need a driveway. This driveway isn't meant for cars. Back in the day, driveways were used for horses or carriages. We must also build a surrounding wall to protect our keep because there could be wild animals or bandits trying to invade our home. Just like many people today build fences around their houses, it was even more dangerous in the medieval times. So a taller stone wall would be more appropriate. After that, we can split the yard into a front bailey and a backyard, making it even more fun for the kids when they play hide and seek. Just having walls isn't enough. While the walls can protect us, we also need to fight back if we're under attack. That's where towers come in. We need to build some towers in strategic spots, like on either side of our main gate and also at the corners of the wall in each direction. We should build these towers in a circular shape because round structures are more reliable than square ones. If you dig out the corner of a square tower, the entire structure could collapse. But a cylindrical tower is much more stable. Additionally, a round tower have fewer blind spots for shooting. Imagine when the enemy attacks. We put archers in these towers to fight back and nobody wanted those archers to miss any shot, right? We need to build arrow slits in the towers as well. These are narrow vertical openings in the walls, just wide enough for archers to shoot arrows through while staying protected. The design allows defenders to fire at attackers from within the safety of the tower, making it much more harder for the enemy to hit back. Arrow slits were a key feature in castle defense. Sometimes people call them arrow loops or loopholes. They're pretty much the same thing. Don't forget, we also need a kitchen, and it was often located in a separate building to reduce the risk of fire spreading. So we can build it along the castle wall, and it'll need a chimney as well. At this point, we've got the basics of a castle: a keep, a kitchen, some walls, and round towers. It's already much more formidable than an ordinary house, but it's still far from being a proper castle. Next, we need to upgrade our castle and add more facilities. We need a blacksmith's forge to craft weapons and armor. We need an armory to store those supplies. We also need a barracks to house our soldiers and keep them ready for battle. There are a few more buildings that need to be done. We can discuss it later, but before we build any of them, we need to construct thicker walls to protect them. These thick stone walls will allow soldiers to move safely between the towers, ensuring our defenses are strong and connected. These walls are sometimes up to 12 feet in some cases, especially in more heavily fortified castles. The walls could be even thicker, reaching up to 15 or 20 feet. That is even thick enough to park an ice cream truck on top. Some castles had what's called a double wall, where there were two parallel walls with a space in between, often filled with rubble or earth. This made the walls even harder to breach. Some castle walls had hidden or secret passages built into them. These could be used by defenders to move undetected from one part of the castle to another, or as escape routes in case the castle was overrun. And it wasn't just about the stones and dirt. The walls were often surrounded by a moat. A moat could be filled with water, or it could be a dry ditch, which was just as effective at slowing down attackers and making it difficult to use siege engines. Some moats were left dry and filled with sharp stakes or lined with smooth, slippery clay to make climbing out nearly impossible. You may ask, what else could we put in the moat? Maybe alligators would be a good idea? I'm not sure about that, but some moats were actually used as fish ponds. This was particularly common in castles that were under siege. Speaking of sieges, attackers sometimes try to drain the moat to make crossing easier. This might involve digging channels to redirect the water or trying to fill the moat with gravel. However, such efforts were often difficult and time-consuming, so most of the time, attackers are forced to assault the castle through the front gate. Castles with moats typically have drawbridges at the main entrance, but today, we're not going to build a drawbridge. Instead, we'll make a simple, narrow bridge that connects the courtyard to the outside land. The security here will be much tighter because the gate is the most vulnerable point of any castle. To further reinforce the gate area, we'll add heavy wooden doors reinforced with iron and a portcullis, a heavy metal grille that can be quickly dropped to block the entrance. Above the gate, we'll build a gatehouse. Small openings called murder holes will be built into the gatehouse ceiling. Defenders can drop stones or boiling oil through them to stop attackers. This setup ensures that even though we're not using a drawbridge, the entrance to our castle remains well guarded and difficult to overcome. After ensuring our security, it's time to expand our keep. The most important addition is the construction of a donjon. A donjon, also known as a great tower, is the strongest and tallest structure in the castle. It serves as both a last line of defense and a symbol of the Lord's power. Inside the donjon, we'll create living quarters for our families, including a large hall for hosting feasts or holding important meetings. The donjon will also house the castle's treasury, where valuable items and documents are kept securely. At the top of the tower, providing a great view of the surrounding lands, this vantage point will allow us to spot approaching enemies from a distance, giving us more time to prepare our defenses. Then, we will proudly hang our family's banner. Finally, it will fly high atop the great tower, catching the wind and serving as a symbol of our legacy and authority. Next, we'll begin constructing the blacksmith's forge and the barracks. No medieval castle would be complete without a blacksmith's forge. It serves as the workshop where weapons, armor, and tools are crafted and repaired. In the Middle Ages, the blacksmith was a crucial figure responsible for producing the swords, shields, and spears that the soldiers relied on. They also made all sorts of other important things like horseshoes, nails, and tools. The forge was always a busy, smoky place, and it was absolutely essential for keeping the castle running. Next to the blacksmith, we'll build the barracks, which will serve as the living quarters for the soldiers. The barracks will be a simple, sturdy building, lined with rows of bunks where the soldiers will sleep. It will also include storage for their personal equipment and perhaps a dining hall where they can eat and relax when they off duty. In the medieval period, armies were quite different from the professional forces we think of today. Instead of having full-time soldiers, medieval armies were often composed of a mix of different groups. The backbone of these armies was usually made up of nobles and their followers. Alongside them were peasants who joined the fight because they had to. They weren't trained soldiers, and very few of them knew how to fight. They were just regular people using whatever weapons they could get. If they survived the battle, they still had to go back home and work on their farms. Now let's turn our attention back to the main gate. We'll construct an additional tower and an extra wall, adding another layer of defense to our castle. After that, we'll place our tax office on top of this new wall. Taxation was an essential part of the feudal system, and the lord of the castle was responsible for collecting taxes from the people who lived on his lands. This process was crucial for maintaining the castle, supporting the military, and funding the lord's lifestyle and obligations. The most common tax was on the land. Peasants who worked the land had to give part of their crops as payment. They might also pay rent for the land they farmed. This rent could be paid with money, more crops, or by doing extra work. The Lord might ask for extra taxes to pay for special things like building a new tower, getting ready for a war, or throwing a big event. These could be one-time payments or temporary increases in the usual taxes. If people didn't pay their taxes, there could be serious consequences. Those who couldn't or wouldn't pay might have to pay a fine, lose their belongings, or even be locked up in the castle's dungeon. In extreme cases, continued failure to pay could result in being banished from the land or physical punishments. And all these punishments were often carried out in public. That's why we are building an execution ground right now. The gathered crowd would witness the consequences of those who stole, betrayed, or committed other serious crimes. These events were meant to scare the common folk and ensure they obey the rules, so the memory of the punishment would spread far beyond the castle's walls. By making punishments public, the community could also see that justice was being served and that the guilty were receiving their due. This helped to reinforce the moral and religious values of the time, showing that the Lord was acting not just in his own interest, but as a guardian of justice. Speaking of which, the Lord of the castle had the authority to act as judge and jury within his lands. He would preside over a court known as the Lord's Court, which is what we are building right now. In theory, the Lord would hear and judge cases according to the law. However, in medieval times, most laws weren't written down but were instead based on local traditions. These laws could be very different from one region to another, influenced by each area's unique history. It was the Lord's responsibility to enforce these laws, interpreting them according to the community's accepted ways. The main entrance in the outer bailey allows the common folk to come and go easily, and it also has a bridge that connects to the Lord's keep, giving the Lord a private way in and out. However, this also creates a new vulnerability in the castle's defenses. To fix this, we need to change the bridge to a wooden one. If the castle comes under attack, the first step would be destroy the bridge, cutting off the access. Speaking of being under attack, we can also construct hoardings on the castle walls. Hoardings are temporary wooden structures that extend from the top of the walls, giving defenders a significant advantage during a siege. They allow soldiers to safely fire arrows or drop stones directly onto the attackers below, while being shielded from enemy fire. These structures can be put together quickly when an attack is about to happen, giving the castle extra defense. Once the danger is over, the hoardings can be taken down and stored until they're needed again. Besides that, we can also build a bakery. It would be equipped with large ovens and plenty of space for preparing dough and other baked goods. Having a dedicated bakery ensures that the Lord and his family always have access to fresh, high-quality bread. It also adds a touch of luxury to the castle, as not every castle had the resources for a specialized bakery. So, up to this point, we have completed the construction of a proper castle within its outer walls, including a blacksmith forge and a barracks, the dungeon and the tax office, the execution ground, and the Lord's Court. Of course, there are more functional buildings we could add, and you can explore those as you continue your journey. But before that, let's first take a look at what surrounds the castle, because without the surroundings, a castle will never survive. Around most castles, we would find a village where the peasants lived. These villagers worked the land, growing the crops and raising the livestock, to support themselves and the castle as well. Villages were home to many craftsmen like carpenters who built houses and furniture, tailors who made clothes, and weavers who created fabric. These workers made the things people needed to live, and they are also the ones who helped the castle function smoothly every day. Many castles were surrounded by forests that served as hunting grounds for the Lord and his guests. Hunting provided not just food, but also a popular activity that helped strengthen social ties among the nobles. The forest around the castle also provided wood for building, fuel, and other needs. Cutting down trees was an important job, and some parts of the forest were set aside specifically for logging in a way that wouldn't harm the forest too much. This way, they could keep using the forest resources for a long time. Most of all, the surrounding lands and their management were a direct reflection of the Lord's power and authority. The way these lands were organized, defended, and maintained demonstrated the Lord's capability to protect and govern his domain. Although this game has its limitations, and there are many things we cannot build yet, but we can still get a sense of the peaceful life in a small village. We've also learned a little bit how a castle is built and developed, and what essential features it must have. I hope you all enjoyed the video and found it useful, even though it was made for my son Joe. Anyway, thanks for watching, and may every child find joy in their dreams, find strength in their imagination, and find the courage to build their own castles.